I'm going to call the meeting of the Clay County Board of Commissioners to order. First order of business we have is approval of the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Opposition, same. Okay. Passes. Now, citizens to be heard. We have one person who's Mr. Minch. You just come forward to the podium there. Certainly.
Passed out my tax statements. I'm focusing on Humboldt Township. That seems to be where they were the worst. And I've also got attached for you my missive that I gave to Greg Kordowski. And I've only got 3 minutes here, so I hope later you can take a look at what I've underlined in red. I'm kind of picking on Humboldt Township because we had a blast like this about 2-3 years ago when they were building their school there, where we saw these kinds of tax increases. 60 and 70% here. The only ones here that are less than that are either CRP, a 19-acre building site, or 31% on a mined out gravel pit, 4-acre gravel pit. That also went up 33%. I think these tax increases are unfair, unreasonable, and unsustainable. I'm sure you haven't heard that here for the first time. According to the backs of these tax statements, the county budget goes up 5%. So whose share am I picking up, and how long is that going to last? I could understand it when Humboldt Township had a new school, but now there's nothing. I don't know what I'm paying for, the new jail. I really don't want to know, but I'm just telling you, I think these are unfair, unsustainable, and unreasonable. If you had a 60-70% tax increase on the homeowners in this county, you'd have riots in the streets. You wouldn't be able to get reelected again. It's the poor farmer that picks this up. My dad started buying land around Cragness in 1970. I started buying land around Barnesville in 1993. We've provided a market for farmland for almost 50 years, and we've been faithful taxpayers for nearly 50 years. But I also owe land in North Dakota. There I saw tax increases of anywhere from 1.2% in Richland County to 11% in Cass County. I saw farmland value increases of 15%. I see that on the North Dakota side of the river, comparable land, I'm paying about $15 an acre tax. Over here now with these latest increases, it's 25. I'm almost old enough to remember when $50 was a good cash rent. So I don't understand why there's these kinds of increases. I'm sure you're not here to apologize for anybody, but just to use up the last of my time here, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to crash the farmland market in Clay County. I'm done buying land in Clay County unless it's right next to me and I've got some strategic purpose to buy it. You can talk to Steffes, Kevin Pfeiffer, any of the appraisers, any of the sellers, and you're going to find out that the investor interest has already disappeared in farmland on this side of the river. Everybody wants to buy in North Dakota, and in my case, especially South Dakota. Taxation in South Dakota is so light, you almost don't even have to worry about it. Here, every time I get a tax statement, I cringe. I don't even want to open the envelope. So you've got people that have been paying tax here in residence for 50, 60 years. The widow decides to sell her farmland. Who's she going to sell it to? Hopefully the neighbor. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be anybody that can buy land in North Dakota. So I don't mean to be harsh about that. I'm sure this is not your fault. I'm sure you've noticed the fact that your governor and your legislature gave away $18 billion. Now we're already $1 billion or $2 billion short. None of that got down to me. I'm paying 60, 70% more in 1 year on my taxes, and I don't see any justification for that. I know that's what the system requires and that the law requires updated appraisals and all of that, but it's not reasonable, it's not sustainable. You're the ones that have to take the heat for it. I don't know if the problem's in St. Paul or not, but you have to start trying to fix it so you don't have to take the heat. So I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions? I know I'm preaching to the converted here. I had the same speech at the Barnesville School District in December. 3 of those people felt the same way. They've gotten statements like this. I think some of the other people that haven't seen proposed tax increases like this wouldn't believe it unless they saw it. So if this is new to anybody, you now have it. Does anybody have any questions or want to complain at me about anything? Otherwise, I think my 3 minutes is up.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you coming forward.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right, sir. Do we have any other people who want to come with an item that's not on our agenda? Have we had anybody want to phone in?
Nothing else, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next on the agenda, approval payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
And I'll second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approval of minutes for January 2nd and January 9th.
I would move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Next, we have a request for approval to hire staff at the Withdrawal Management Detox facility. Troy and Kathy?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today, we are here to request a few positions for our withdrawal management program. We recently had one LPN resignation, so we are going to have to advertise and hire for that one. And then we also have one full-time LPN and one full-time technician who have been out on leave since November due to an incident that we had in our withdrawal management program. So we're looking to take and replace them. We're not sure when they're going to be back to work, so we're hoping to replace them and just move forward some of the hiring that we're going to do for the new facility by a month.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, just wanted to talk a little bit about this. We, early in December, have talked about the need for filling these positions. It's a unique circumstance, certainly understanding this board's support of the new facility that will be opening in the next year. It's really important to make sure that our staffing plan is as full as possible. So certainly this, I think because of timing, had meant to come before the PIC committee. Commissioner Gross and I had discussions about this coming forward to this board, but due to timing, we're not able to have one of those meetings in December, but I certainly support the request.
Well, we've got a real,
Motion to approve.
okay.
Second.
I think this is a fairly clear need and certainly worth consideration. So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Request for approval to fill a new Assistant County Attorney position. Mr. Melton, good morning.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, as you're aware, I did have a part-time position through ARPA funding that worked fairly well for us for over a year period of time, but was definitely a temporary piece. So we're going to miss Anna and her work that she offered. But within the meantime, as you're aware, I asked for and budgeted for a new position, or to make that position from part-time to full-time, which was approved, and so we are requesting at this time to be able to advertise for that and then fill that starting as of January 1st, 2024.
Any questions for Mr. Melton?
Move approval.
And I'll second that.
Okay, have motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Ms. Melton.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Okay, next we get a request for approval of change order number 3 for the Withdrawal Management Detox Facility Project. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning, for your consideration is change order number 3. Five different changes. An interesting day because today we're actually have more credits than we do additional expenses. As I mentioned, there's 5 items. The first item is a credit of $12,844.93. We've had some conversations when the DMV project was added up on 15th Avenue North. The project looked at going from 2 signs to 1 sign, and that sign then was moved into the DMV project, and so we were able to have a credit in the detox substance use. The next item is a parapet height discrepancy. There's a number of inches around the exterior of the building that was not in the drawing or not to the actual height that was needed, and so we saw a $7,697 increase. The next heat trace control is a B3 item. It has to do with the rain leaders, making sure that they are not, don't ice over. What this does is provide maintenance and opportunity to see it electronically versus having to manually check it. So that would be a $3,607.60 increase. Landscaping revisions, when we went in and did the geothermal digging, there was a thought that there would be additional roots that they may have to dig through. And so fortunately for the project, there was not. And so there's looking at a $13,023 credit. And the last item has to do with the spray foam at the top of the exterior of the stud walls. Just how the walls come, the steel comes in the walls. We couldn't get the vapor barrier behind that, and so they had to spray it rather than have the vapor barrier. So that would be an increase of $4,100. As I mentioned, the credits are larger than the additional costs, and so we have a credit of this change order for $10,463.33, increasing our remaining contingency in the project up to $277,769.69. With that, I'd yield for any questions.
Be nice to have all the change orders of this nature. Any comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a move and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. Steve?
Steve, can I, Mr. Chairman, can I ask Steve a question, related questions? When we had our last construction meeting, you know, the B3 stuff came up, and one of the things that was talked about is if we'd submitted any submittals for reimbursement for that grant.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what the status is on that. I know that Lori was going to work with somebody from Kathy's office.
Yeah, they're in the process. The next payments are able to come from the state bonding dollars.
They are. Or
They
not?
are.
Yeah, okay, but I'm just wondering if we've received those funds from the state.
Yes, my understanding is we have.
Good.
We've got an additional change order for the DMV project.
Thank you. Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is change order number 1 for the DMV project. Total additional costs are $1,244.58. There is one credit of $970.92 on some door and hardware revisions. And then we did, I think we've had some discussions here about the stockpile of dirt that they had right next to 15th Avenue North that the city of Moore had asked to remove, and that cost $2,100. And so, again, a net increase of $1,244.58. $34.58. That I'd yield for any questions.
Move for,
Question, why do we have to remove the dirt?
yeah.
The concern was that it would act as a snow fence, and so they ended up moving it off to the west and kind of leveled it out.
If you drove by that early on, once that was removed, it was not very far off of the 15th Avenue roadway. And as you recall, there's not a whole lot of trees up there to stop the wind drifting, so the city of Moorhead was quite concerned that it would become a drift collector in a normal snow year.
Yeah, it was, that, I think that pile was close to 6 feet tall, I think, and it was pretty much right up against the curb. You know, so, you know, now an argument could be made, well, why was it put there in the first place? But I think at the time when they were doing all that landscaping and stuff, there wasn't another spot available at that time for it to go, so. And then once they were able to get all of the foundation work around it, then that's when they were able to take and move that and spread it out, so.
There's advantages and disadvantages to not having trees and roots, so we benefited in the last motion. We didn't have to dig up roots. I was wondering, why did they ever factor that in there? There's not a tree in all the acreage, but this obviously was one of the downsides of having nice flat land you can work. Any other comments or any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the change order for $1,224.58.
Second.
Hey, any other discussion?
And just to point in, you know, oftentimes when these things come before us like this, they have met the approval of the committee too already, so, you know, otherwise we wouldn't be bringing it forward like this, so.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
The committee reports. Commissioner Krabbenhoff, would you start us off?
Sure will. So on January 10th, Wednesday, I had our quarterly meeting for the Cass Clay Food Commission in the Fargo Chamber. Well attended. We had a really good overall video about what the Cass Clay Food Partners is involved with in our community and the food system. So focusing on distribution, creation of good, healthy foods in our community gardens and otherwise, and how to distributing that food throughout our community also. Good presentation. The other thing I wanted to bring forward, we have an action arm of what we do in the Food Partners. That used to be something toward what was called First Fridays, and that is discontinued. And we've done a survey throughout for over a month, and we got the results back. Had decent responses from it, and we're taking those new ideas. People definitely want something consistent like that was. Maybe it's not every week, but maybe every other week, who knows quite yet. And certainly something for education, something for retail, and something more on the agricultural side as far as information. So it's not all about food markets, it's about the raising and again, what we can do for the distribution of good foods. And then the last thing was a recognition that I think is worth bringing up, if you bear with me just 1 minute. So we had a part, and it was called Kudos and Community Recognition. And I do want to make comment about something that was done in 2023 for the Field of the Dome. And I was really moved by this, and I'll just read a little recap here. More than 50 area elementary, middle, and high schools participated in the 17th annual Fill the Dome event last November. With the help of metro area student ambassadors, and this presentation was given by a young lady from MSUM, area students raised over $30,000 cash, which went back out in the community, mostly in the ways of potentially backpacks and other things that would help young kids and that are in need, and it collected more than 100,000 pounds of food. Incredible amount. And since this project, or this Fill the Dome event has been in existence since 2007, Fill the Dome has raised over $740,000 and collected over 2.5 million pounds of food. So pretty impressive, and it was nice to hear from the young lady about what that group has done and what they continue to do. With that, on Thursday, January 11th, it was at the Clay SWCD meeting. We had election of officers. They all stayed there in the same as their present positions. There are 5 supervisors. And then it was first of the year items, much like other government entities go through at the beginning of the year. One of the things that totally impresses me right now is the flow of money coming through the IRA, through the federal government, also the flow through the state government, and grant possibilities and things that are out there. I mean, I've never seen these numbers close to this over the years. And so Clay County coming back local is going to be in place. We don't know the exact dollar amounts yet, but somewhere between $1 million to $2 million in grants for soil health practices, and it's very impressive. And with that will happen, we had 2 new hires within the group this last year. That was part of capacity building with extra funding from the state that we lobbied hard for, and utilizing those 2 new people in their skill set for their development to help on these soil health practices and implementation, education. And then also in the establishment of these grants, working in line with the county, with the watershed districts, and then of course through the One Watershed, One plans, both in the Buffalo Red and the Wild Rice. So they too, like us at the county, they have their legislative day. That will be coming up at the Capitol in March. And of course, our legislative session will start February 12th. And then the last thing I'd like to bring up is that there, out of the 5 areas of supervisors throughout the county, 3 of them are going to be up for election in November. And those filing dates for those positions, if people are interested, filing dates for those are May 21st through June 4th to file for, if you want to run for supervisor position. On Friday, I had the first planning. It's part of the Early Childhood Initiative. We had our first planning meeting for what is called the Longest Table, an event that's been going on since 2019. It was postponed, I think, in 2020, maybe 2021 during the pandemic, but it's back up and running, and I think we're going to hear a further report about this in the near future. It was our first part of our planning meeting. This year the event will be on June 27th, and it'll be at M State, and the goal again will be around 300 people, which is a lot of people and a long table. So we try to engage our communities throughout Moorhead and Dilworth in our area, and hopefully, and the weather will cooperate, it'll be another good event. Lastly, on later that afternoon, I had the Finance Committee for the Historical and Cultural Society. We reviewed our 2023 line items and our financial position at the end of the year. Due to increased admissions and gift sales, it was, again, everything ran in the black, which is really good, and now we transition into 2024. That's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Last week, I attended the Soil and Water Conservation District meeting with Commissioner Krabanoff. Did discuss and take action on all of the first of the year items. They did approve an Ag BMP loan application for a septic system and water filtration system, and did review and approve the 2023 pay equity report. But other than that, Commissioner Krabanoff covered that quite well. And that concludes my reports.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On January 9th, I attended a strategic asset management plan for the Diversion Authority. This was put in place. It had members of the lands people from the Diversion Authority, as well as the attorneys, engineers. Our county engineer, Justin Sorm, also attended, and Mike Leeser from the county attorney's office attended, and this was all part of moving forward with, in the future, what is gonna be considered an asset of the diversion project, so that we can better prepare for an operations and maintenance plan operation, what those costs would be and how they would be paid for in years to come. So that was just an initial kickoff meeting on that. And I wanted to make sure that they were including some of the other projects that are on the Minnesota side that are actually being sponsored by, for example, the Buffalo Red River Watershed District and those areas, to find out who's gonna, so that we don't have no surprises in the future, who's gonna be maintaining what and what those responsibilities are. So it's in the initial stages of that. There's gonna be more meetings to come, but I found that to be a very, very positive planning meeting. That same day, then we did have our diversion planning committee meeting. And then the primary issue was, well, there was two kind of significant issues that were there. One was there was a flood wall on South University that was done a number of years ago that has failed. And again, this goes to that, what I just talked about before, about what are the assets that are gonna be owned by the Diversion Authority, and who's gonna, and so we know who's paying for what. This flood wall was done quite some time ago, but it was also done as a means to meet the 37-foot threshold. That everything, so basically everything that's done in the Fargo-Moorhead area that was done to meet the 37-foot flood threshold is going to be considered to be an asset of the Diversion Authority. So the question became, because because this has been such a long project, I think this thing was done in 2010, 2012, and somewhere in that time frame, and so it started. There's some geotechnical issues that made that thing slump, and so now they're going to fix it, and that cost is upwards of $5 million. And so the city of Fargo came to the Diversion Authority saying, well, this is an asset of the Diversion Authority. So we had that conversation, and it's, our planning commission talked about it, and we recommend that it would go to the finance committee with recommendation to fund that out of the, right now there's several contingencies within the diversion project, to the tune, there's like $160 million of contingencies in there. And there was one that was designated specifically for Fargo, and I don't know why the amount was what it was, but it was $6.5 million, I believe was the number. So the planning commission basically recommended to the finance committee that yes, we should cover that project because it is part of that threshold that's needed, and that those funds come out of that contingency. So that was just the finance committee has not met yet, so I don't know what, I'm assuming and hopeful that will be the result of it, is that they will agree to fix that. And then, of course, the other one has been, the other issue that was talked about was the Christine project in North Dakota. They, part of that whole settlement agreement, we were to build them a 500-year protection levee around Christine. And so now that there's, but there was a lot of, in the agreement, there was a lot of things that was the responsibility of Christine to do and some things that were the responsibility of the Diversion Authority to do. And, you know, and then, which included the boundaries, how big that levee would be. In other words, we weren't going to say, well, you could go out 15 miles and protect 15 miles, you know, because we have to keep in mind of the, you know, the further out you make that, the less storage there is, and it can have impacts, the hydrological components of that. And so anyway, Joe Paulson, the executive director, was going to be going to a meeting with Christine shortly. And what they've done is they've also, if they can't come to an agreement, then there's going to be easements that are going to be required, flowage easements and those types of things that are going to be required to do. And of course, to meet the timeline, to have all of the lands according to the Minnesota DNR permit and all permits, is all those things have to be in hand before the project can be operational. And the project is to be operational in the fall of, or sometime in 2027 is the projected date.
I got a question. How far south is that diversion gonna go?
Well, the inlet structure is, help me.
The inlet structure is, like, so 110th, is it 140th Avenue South?
That sounds right.
So that's where the inlet is on the Red River, and then,
So is Christine south of there?
No, that's, Christine
Yeah.
is, well,
yeah, it's south of
Yes,
there.
yes,
They just have to
Christine is south
mitigate,
of
that's
there.
where they have to mitigate though,
Yeah.
because the dam, excuse me,
Yeah.
will then run around Highway 75 all the way south to the Wilkin County line.
so once the project is implemented, Christine will be on the wrong side of the dam and ditch. And so with that, then we have to go through that, but to go back and so to, North Dakota has a completely different process in terms of if eminent domain were to be needed, for example, for obtaining those land rights that we would need for the project. And so the Diversion Authority, in looking through this, they had to, you know, back up based on the timeline and say, well, when do we need to start this in order to have it completed in time to have the lands meet that deadline? And so I know that I think there was a council meeting with the city of Christine last week, I believe, that Joel Paulson and others were going to go to explain to them why, because there was no agreement on that project yet, that they had to move forward with some of these things as a precautionary measure with the hopes that they wouldn't have to use them. So those were two things that we discussed in our planning commission meeting, which, by the way, is also an open meeting. So, and then on Wednesday, January 10th, I had a Red River Regional Dispatch Budget and Finance Committee meeting. We reviewed the 2023 year-to-date budget, and of course, at the close of that year, we did have revenues over expenditures that were reported, and they were somewhat anticipated. And then we had some discussion about the transition to Cass County being the fiscal agent for the project. And then there was also an issue in regards to the mileage and all that kind of thing, and so there was a recommendation to go to the full board to adopt the North Dakota state or the federal per diem rates for mileage and meals and all that stuff. Whichever one of those rates were higher, I think that was what was in their previous contract, so we just followed through with that, switching over to Cass County. And then on January 11th, then we had the Red River Regional Dispatch board meeting itself, our very own Commissioner Ebinger was elected chair for this year, and Commissioner Sherling from Cass County was elected vice chair. Then we went into a facility update, and of course, one of the things that they found out doing the geotechnical stuff is that they've now found that there's 4 feet of unstable, bad dirt, basically, is what it is, and so that's going to have to now be removed and brought in with new fill that's going to do that. And I think it's common, right? We experienced that with some of our buildings that we did here. The jail, I think, was one of them. So, but that's going to add some additional costs. We did receive an update on the director search, and Chair Ebinger serves on that committee, and he can probably follow up with his report on the timeline of when we might expect to have a new dispatch operator. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Gross?
Wednesday had the Wild Rice Watershed Board meeting, and there wasn't much action on permits and complaints. It didn't have very many, and they took care of them. And they went over the financial audit process coming up. Had a long discussion on the crossing of a bridge and trying to decide what to do. A landowner meeting involved, because so many people are involved in it. So, and discuss sick and safe time requirements. And on Thursday, had the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. The Minnesota Guard's going to move in their new building. They're not new building, but refurbished building in May. They're planning on moving into that. Also, the veterans going to Washington, D.C. They got 1 plane coming up in May and 2 planes in September. So got a lot of people, a lot of veterans applying to get on those planes. So the National Cemetery is expanding. You probably read that already. They're expanding another 35 acres out there. And they're also building on to adding on a building out there to take care of the funerals out there. I guess that's pretty much it.
Thank you. On the 10th, I virtually attended the Northwest Emergency Communication Board joint meeting between the RAC and the board. We had general business that was covered, but I think on what I want to focus on, we had a report on Next Generation 911 from the state employees of the ECB, Emergency Communication Board. I want to just touch on that. One of the priorities we have as a board has been to look at the 911 funding. And this clarifies and shows a lack of clarity in a lot of things about this report we had. I'm going to get a copy of the PowerPoint that they used and provide it to the county administrator and anybody here that's interested. But we have 80 cents on every device you use if you're a Minnesota resident, whether it's a wall phone, an iPad, a cell phone. You're paying 80 cents a month into the emergency communication funds, 911 funds. And that's distributed to maintain a special revenue account. Among other things, it supports the backbone system, the armor system, but also it goes into a special revenue account. And then we have unallocated funds. Nobody can tell us how much is in the unallocated funds. And that sounds suspicious. I don't think it is. I think that we're pinning it down now. I understand there was a finance committee meeting with the ECB where they had wanted some answers. We're told they get them. But the money in that unallocated fund, over and above what the counties are given already, is unspecified, and we need that to be specified. And that's one of the things I think we need to focus on when we look at developing legislation for our local 911 needs. Right now, what the plan is with the emergency communication network is that they have a determination on whether they want to increase our monthly funding, change funding distributions within their own distribution methods, have a needs based on one-time appropriations where you can submit if you're going to buy new consoles or make a major capital investment. You can submit to the state to try and get funding for that. Or at least an increase of allocations for some of the special needs that you may have in your region. They want to use one of those needs or more than one. They want to figure out how they're going to distribute the funds. So what they've done is they're initiating a study, which anybody that's familiar with legislation knows that has a chilling effect on anything going into the legislature in this session. But the study, they assure us, will be done by the second quarter of 2025. The study and the planning that the results will be drawn from. And the study is starting in the southwest region and is going to go through all the regions in the state. We're in the northwest region. They're going to collect data throughout the year, do a needs assessment, come up with a regional plan. They're going to provide staff for that. We're very lucky we have at the Red River Dispatch Center probably one of the more skilled technicians, Brian Zaspil. He actually does the job of overseeing the system for the Northwest region, in addition to his main job, which is doing it for us here in the Red River. We're going to work on that. It should come through with some data, but as we look at our legislative priorities, the reason I'm taking so much time to take you down this rabbit hole is between that and the fact that the change of the state statute has been held up while the state hires a third party, and I'm on that committee. We've not done enough work to be ready for anything for this session. So I think we need to be mindful of where this is going. I think we need to be very focused, and I'm going to talk to Brian and whoever the new dispatch center director is to make sure we are actively participating in our regional study. I don't think I need to state that to them, but probably going to be right on top of it. But we may be off to the 2025 session before we have any meaningful legislation. Again, I'll get the PowerPoint for everybody or anybody who's interested, and we can try and look at it. Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah, thank you for that report. It's something that's important to us, and I think it's important to our smaller communities that have been talking to us about the costs of dispatch. This kind of goes hand in hand with that. And as they're moving forward with studying this, hopefully somebody can tell us how much money they collect out of Clay County. We've been asking that question for about a year and a half now or so, how much money they're collecting out of Clay County. And so it would be nice to know what that is compared to what they're actually returning to us in Clay County. So as they establish some sort of a formula going forward, some of the different things you talked about, some of the different options that they might be looking at, I think it's important for us to be able to, to have the ins and outs of what comes in and goes out in Clay County, so that might help us in answering which of those solutions that would be best for Clay County. So for example, if we're bringing in $1 million a year, and we're seeing a return or a number brought back to us in the terms of 400,000 or 300,000, there's quite a bit of gap that they're using for other purposes outside of Clay County. Now, granted, I agree there's the overall infrastructure, the armor system and all that, that we've all had to help fund. But I think it's important for us to get those answers so that we can, we need to advocate on what's best for Clay County and how we can better reduce that financial burden that we're putting on taxpayers when we're already paying those 911 fees.
We, if for no other reason, we need to determine what our county is putting into the pot, simply because we can't, like a non-border county, we can't sit there and say, our budget is the total that you need to base state allocations on. State allocations are going to have to come in proportion with what we pay, because we're not supporting the entire system with Minnesota funds. We're supporting, the North Dakota generously supports the Fargo or the Cass County side. Minnesota, not so much. They give us a great backbone system, but funding needs to be based on your entire need, and we need to know exactly how much we're putting in to determine a share of that. We also, and I think during the study, we need to be very active, and I'm sure the sheriff will be involved very much in this to make sure rural Clay County is represented. There is, within this board, it's Ryan Nelson now, but there's a Moorhead City Commissioner on it. He's new to the process, but I've worked with him before in other matters, and he is very scrupulous in making analysis of these things. I think he's going to be a good partner. The Minnesota side needs to be engaged, and we need to be very much involved in the study when it comes our way. I'm going to continue to monitor this and try and stay on top of it. But I want my fellow commissioners to know you've made this a priority. We've had numerous conversations with our rural mayors. They are very active in wanting to figure out how we can be more supportive in funding for 911. And nothing's going to happen quick, but we're going to stay on top of it. And we're going to try and be on point in getting some things done to bring some more funding in. Any questions or comments on that? I know it involves everybody here. Okay, I'll move on. On the 11th, I attended the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon meeting with Commissioner Gross. He covered it well. One thing I'd like to point out is Kurt Cannon, our Veteran Service Officer, indicated that the post 9/11 bonuses are still open, and now they allow individuals who do not have Minnesota as their home of origin on their DD 214 to apply as long as you currently live in Minnesota. If you have any questions or need help with the process on that, Mr. Cannon is a superstar VSO, and contact our Veteran Service Officers office here. And later that day, I had the Red River Dispatch Center Board of Authority meeting. Commissioner Campbell covered that pretty well. We did have a protracted discussion. Some of the staff at the RRDC wanted to look at flipping the current plans to move the dispatch floor towards the front where there'd be easier access from the parking lot. We determined in our discussions on that not only was it an additional cost, it would probably slow things down by a month or two, and we're just not going to slow it down. But we did look at some options where the benefits could be gained without doing a whole rewrite on the floor plan, and that is being worked through between RRDC staff and the architect. And that completes my report. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I met after the board meeting along with Commissioner Eberger and Commissioner Gross. We did meet briefly with Kathy McKay and Kurt Severson in regards to the food pool and lodging fees that this board approved increasing along with Otter Tail, Wilkin, and Becker. On the 9th, also participated in the asset meeting with the diversion that Commissioner Campbell has talked about. On the 9th, met with Mark Sloan on a series of GIS issues. On the 10th, we had Clay County Management Department updates are going to be starting for 2024 on February 6th, and so Jackie's put that list out to our different departments. We talked about ESST. We heard a communications update from Jackie, and then talked about leadership training in 2024. That afternoon, I met with Darren on a series of HR issues. On the 11th, as part of our risk management policy, we had our first meeting of our MCIT Administrator Risk Management Group. Again, with the risk management, we brought together a series of our policies, and this group is kind of going to have some oversight to make sure that on a quarterly basis that all the proper documents are getting completed. Any new purchases are added, and so that was a good meeting. On the 12th, I met with Mr. Melton and Mr. Leeser on a series of county issues. The next week, we will be bringing the consideration for authorizing the issuance of bonding for the DMV. We should be notified early next week as far as hopefully the interest level. And then also, I just did want to clarify that Commissioner Campbell's comment or questioned me earlier in regards to funding for the DMV that we received. Much like the Resource Recovery Center, the funding that we received from the state is based on reimbursements. And so we have all the documentations. Troy and Kathy have all the proper documentations, and so they'll be able to make those.
So the question, has it been submitted?
So we have not submitted, there's not been any bills that have been submitted to the state bond yet.
Okay.
But the next one has been, Lori's worked with Carmen Barth, and the next one is being submitted.
So hopefully, this next $4 million payment order that we have, most of that would qualify that we could get reimbursed. Yeah, I think the sooner we can get that state money, the better.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Melton, anything for us?
Yes.
Jackie?
Something else if there, I have something maybe
Commissioner Campbell?
for Mr. Melton. I don't want to volunteer time on behalf of everybody, but I do notice that MCIT is holding a open meeting law deal on the 17th. Are you aware of that? Yeah. Because there's some ongoing questions, and with this most recent thing, I just noticed here the number of times a board member may participate remotely in an open meeting, circumstances in which a remote location may be closed, participating in an out-of-state location. And so a lot of those, they were pretty clear during COVID. But I think some of those things have been loosened a little bit. But I just think, we should have somebody
I think both myself and Mr. Leeser currently were signed up, and I think the only
excellent.
one or the other of us will for sure.
Okay. Because it recommends county attorneys attend that. That'd be great. And then I don't know if we as commissioners could get some sort of do's and don'ts type of a thing so that we know what our options are. I think that would be helpful for all of us to attend remotely. Thank you for that.
I had a question on these meetings. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm done, yeah.
Those meetings on Thursday, are they, what are they about? Are we supposed to be attending these meetings?
Jackie's been dealing mostly with the chamber on that.
Okay. I have been working with Jackie and Kale from the chamber. On Thursday, it is a roundtable, and all but one, I think, of our Clay County representatives have been confirmed. And it's an opportunity for them to come here and have a roundtable with members of the community that the chamber has invited. I asked Jackie to advertise this so that if you wanted to come, you were more than welcome to come. And then I've also talked with Steve and Jackie about having our legislative priorities put on a sheet so that after the meeting, if we want to and have time to grab a hold of the representatives and senators, we can have conversations with them. So certainly you're welcome to attend because it has been advertised as such.
Okay, thank you.
Any other issues? All right, we're adjourned.